Hi guys, this is Soraya Luctornell, your Big Island real estate agent, and today I'm going to talk about moving tips, about moving to Kailua-Kona, and the top 5 questions that I get asked all the time, my frequently asked questions, so that I can help you, and that way you don't have to ask anybody about those things. The first thing that I get asked all the time is, what are lava zones? What do we care about lava zones? What are lava zones? I've never heard of this stuff. So lava zones, okay, let's back up. I hope you know that the Big Island is made up of 5 volcanoes, right? And the reasons why we have lava zones is because you are literally on multiple volcanoes, and 2 of them are active. Mauna Loa is active and Kilauea is active. Those are the 2 volcanoes that are active. Lava zones are created by the USGS, which is a government entity that works with, local parks, geology, things like that. And so we have a big center for volcanic activity, right, on the Big Island. And the lava zones are essentially a map of historical data of flows and where they were and how much of it, like 10% increase from the flow that went down, and then 10% above that, 5% above that, kind of like that. So you have your flow, right? And you have your flow, and they say on the map, like, this is the flow that we have data for that showed that it kept flowing right here. And then they increase lava zones by 5% and saying, like, okay, there's a chance that it's going to go this way. 10%, it's going to go that way. So I'll give you the exact definition of lava zone. Lava zones are long-term lava flow hazards based on geological data, which is what I was saying, the behavior of Hawaiian volcanoes over several thousand years of eruptive behavior, the distribution and ages of lava flows and volcanic vents, the structure of the volcano, and topography. So what they're saying by this is some of the lava zones are really low risk, because in order for the lava to get there, it'd have to go uphill, right? And so that's not going to happen. So anyway, so lava zones are zone 1 through zone 9. The lower the number, the higher the risk, or the higher the hazard. And the lower the number, it means that's where they have found that the lava actually flows through those areas. So that's why you care about lava zones. From a real estate standpoint, lava zones 1, you are at the highest risk of flow going through your property. And so loan banks, mortgage lenders will not give you a loan for lava zone 1 area. And I'll put a map up so that you can see what the lava zones are like. Lava zone 2, you can get a loan. However, you will pay extra fees because it's extra dangerous. So you can get it, but it's not going to be as cheap as if you went in a lava zone 3 and above. Lava zone 3 and above, there's no problem. You can get any type of loan that you want. And usually I recommend to my clients to live in a lava zone 3 and above area, just because it gives you peace of mind. If you look at the map, right, of the Big Island, which I'll put up, you can see that the north side is an extremely safe area. And the reason for that is because Kilauea and Mauna Loa are on the south side, and they're the 2 most active volcanoes. That's where you have the volcanic vents, that's where you get the earthquakes, and that's where you get all that kind of stuff. If you're looking at lava zones 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, which is at the north mostly, that is the least hazardous region, and that consists of Kohala, right? Kohala is right there up at the north, and it's a volcano that has not erupted for tens of thousands of years. So that's why that is usually a lower risk region, and that's why you care about this. Okay, so lava zones, we kind of covered it. You don't really need to know much more than this. I mean, we can get into it, like, and get really deep into this, because when you're looking in the south, it's really helpful to have the map. And usually with my clients, like, we'll go over the map if you have a budget that is for the south. And I explain to them, like, okay, if you're looking here, you have to keep in mind these extra costs and things like that. So I can really do a deeper dive with you, but it's all going to be based on your buyer consultation and understanding your budget and the life standard you're looking for. Okay, the second question that I get asked all the time is, what is a leasehold versus fee simple? On Kauai, that's something that's very prevalent. Same with Oahu, same with the Big Island. The reason why people ask this question is because you'll be browsing on realtor.com, Redfin, Zillow, whatever it may be, and you realize, like, oh, there's two properties, two condos that are right next to each other, but one of them is half the price. And then when you read the description to try to understand the difference, the first sentence is always, this is a leasehold property. Okay, a leasehold property essentially means that you don't fully own the property like you would for a fee simple property, which is what you typically have on the mainland. Leasehold means that you do not own the land, someone else does, and somebody built on top of the land, and they lease the land from somebody, a leasehold holder. And so once you have your condo complex on top, they sold all the different condos inside of that apartment building, and they leased it for years. Most of the leases are between 75 and 100 years. However, most of them are coming to an end in the next couple years. So some of the leaseholds that we have in Kailua-Kona are between 6 years, 10 years, 15 years, 16 years, and some of them are as soon as 2 years from today. And I personally own a leasehold property, and the lease is not expiring until 2072 or 2079. Something like that. It's in a really, really long time. And that's why we purchased this leasehold property, is because they're cheaper. They're so much cheaper. So if you're looking at an investment property, which is what we're using ours for, it's a very cheap entry into owning an investment property. If your lease has more than 35 years left, you're allowed to get a loan. You can get a loan on a very cheap property. So that's why a lot of investors are very interested in those little leasehold complexes. And some of them are even zoned for short-term vacation rental on the Big Island. So you can buy one, like we have some for sale that are around $260,000 to $300,000, and you can do short-term vacation rental, and the lease doesn't end until 2079. The other reason why some people purchase leasehold properties, and if you're subscribing to my channel, you know about this already, but rental rates in Hawaii are quite expensive. It's really hard to find a property for rent. It's very expensive. So this is a way for them to fix their cost for monthly rental for a couple years. So it could be 6 years, it could be 10 years, or it could be until 2070 something. The one big drawback of leasehold properties is once your lease is up, you can lose all of your equity. The person who owns the land, who's leasing you the property, can say, hey, I want my property back, you need to leave. And so then they take back the ownership of their land and whatever is on top of it. Now, what that means, if you have a condo, it means that you lose your equity. You literally lost your money. Hopefully you made it back while you own the property, or you fixed your rent. What they can also do is they can say, hey, I'm going to renew the lease. However, it's going to cost X amount of money. And so when they renew the lease, they have a certain cost that they want you to pay, and that's something that's negotiated between your HOA or AOAO association and the lessor, which is the person who you lease from. So that's something to keep in mind. So you may lose all your equity, or you'd have to pay a fee to get it again for another certain amount of years. The other thing that they can do is they can tell you, hey, I'm gonna allow you and sell to you the rights of switching your property between leasehold and fee simple, and it's gonna cost X amount of money. We're seeing this a lot right now in one of the complexes in Kona, where I believe the fee is around $300,000 to $350,000 to do the switch between leasehold and fee simple. So that's something to keep in mind when you're looking at an investment and whether it's worth it or not for you to do that, depending on how many years are left, and seeing if the resale value is there. I had a client contact me saying that they wanted to sell their property because they had just switched from leasehold to fee simple. However, the comps for that complex were under how much he invested into the property, and so I actually advised him to keep the property for a couple years until he can make up that difference and then sell it, versus like selling it right now at a loss. So that's just little things that you need to think about when you're looking at the conversion from leasehold to fee simple. Where can I do Airbnb or short-term vacation rental STVR in Hawaii? That's a great question that I get all the time. You need to know that every county in Hawaii has different sets of rules. What that means is Oahu, Maui, and Hawaii, for example, all have different rules. We do not play by the same rules. I am an expert at the Hawaii County, so the Big Island, rules. So I can really help you with that. I do have some associates that I work with in different islands that are expert in this as well. So if you're looking at different islands, I can refer you to really highly educated realtors who can help you on this. But for the Big Island, Hawaii County, you need to be in the correct zone and the correct node, and your HOA needs to allow for it. Because what I've found is that if you look at one street, let's say Ali'i Drive, which is the main strip in Kona, some of the properties that are on the ocean side, right, like towards the ocean, those are usually, not all of them, but those are usually short-term vacation rental permitted. And then when you look on the other side, the mountain side of Ali'i Drive, it really depends. You have to really know the zoning of each property. It's not going to be like a definite rule, like this one, like, or, you know, this whole row. Like, no, you need to have a realtor who knows those rules, because it's really complex to complex specific. Okay. The other thing is, let's say that you find a property that is in the node, it's got the right zoning, it seems permitted for short-term vacation rental. Then you go on VRBO and Airbnb and you realize there are no listings in this complex. And the reason for that is that sometimes HOAs or AOAOs, communities, will overrule the Hawaii County and say, we do not allow for that in our community. We voted as owners and decided that that is not the lifestyle that we want. And so you can't do short-term vacation rentals in this complex, even though you're zoned for that. Now, you can always change the rules of your HOA, but that's just something to keep in mind when you're looking at properties. Okay, another question that I get asked all the time is, how much does it cost to own a property or home in Hawaii? And I understand this question. It's very, you're trying to budget, right? Like, you're trying to understand how much you need to budget every month. What does it really cost to live in Hawaii, and what does that look like? Because some of the states are much more expensive. So for example, when we lived in Texas, I mean, property taxes were through the roof, but then income taxes were not there. So that's just something to keep in mind. So let's talk about Hawaii specifically. Hawaii has some of the lowest taxes in the entire United States. And we have a lot of exemptions based on if this property is your primary home, based on your age, if you're a veteran, if you have a disability. There are a lot of exemptions that you can take for your property taxes to lower your property taxes. So that's great, right? So I can show you here. I'll put a property tax table that shows you the different rates, and then you can pick out, you know, where you live, if you're a homeowner, if your property is an investment property, so it's going to be in a hotel / resort, or if you're looking at farms, right, so agricultural, all those things, or if you're just looking at a second home, such as a residential area under 2 million, this is how much you're going to pay. Electricity is really expensive in Hawaii because we're on an island and everything is imported, and so the average cent per kilowatt hour is 47 cents here on the Big Island, Hawaii County. For reference, if you're in California, I believe it's around 30 cents, so it's going to be quite significantly more expensive. From the feedback that I've received from some of my friends and some of my clients is that usually you have to pay quite a bit for water. In Hawaii, water is not that expensive. If you have county water, or if you have a catchment tank and you get, you know, deliveries, or hopefully you can just collect it yourself, it's pretty cheap, right? It's not that expensive. The most expensive water that I've heard of or seen as a real estate agent is private water. A lot of higher end communities are on a private well, and they don't have the rights to the well. Someone else owns it, right? And then that person gets to set the price of whatever they want to do or set for the water. And so I've seen some water bills that are around $450, upwards of $550 a month. And so that's something to keep in mind when you're looking at those types of properties. If you're looking at a gardener, or, you know, termites, things like that, those are usually things that you need in order to upkeep your property. If you have a condo, of course, don't worry about that. But if you have a home, you know, getting help or any type of vendors is more expensive. I've heard people get gardeners that do their yard for $100-$150 a month. I've heard other people pay upwards of $400 a month. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're budgeting. The other question that I get asked all the time is, what is covered in this HOA? Why am I paying an HOA that's so expensive? Well, when you pay for HOA fees, typically that includes walls out. So you are responsible to get insurance walls in. So the walls inside of your condo, inside, you have to pay for the insurance inside. The HOA covers everything outside. So they cover the stucco, they cover usually your lanai floor, the lanai upkeep, right? Like the railing. Usually that includes the roof, that includes all of the common areas, the paying for the parking to be paved, or anything like that. Like that will be usually covered in your HOA fee. Usually that HOA fee also covers cable, Wi-Fi, trash, and water. That's very typical. Sometimes electricity, which is nice because it's very expensive, as we discussed. And then you, of course, pay for all the staff. All the staff that is working for your community, your HOA. If you have a guard up front to let people in or checks people in, all that stuff, that's usually covered in your HOA. So I hope this video was helpful. Please subscribe to my channel if you want to learn more about Hawaii and the Big Island. And, you know, if you have any questions or any concerns that you'd like me to do a video on, please leave a comment and I'll make sure to address it. Have a great day. Aloha.